The Iran-Israel conflict is often seen as a defining struggle in the modern Middle East, but it's important to recognize that this rivalry is a relatively recent development in the long histories of both nations. Contrary to popular belief, the animosity between Iran and Israel is not rooted in ancient religious or ethnic disputes. Instead, it is a product of shifting alliances, political upheaval, and the changing landscape of regional power. In fact, before 1979, Iran and Israel maintained a surprisingly close relationship. The two countries found common ground, cooperating on trade, intelligence, and even military matters. Both were non-Arab states surrounded by often hostile Arab neighbors, and this shared sense of isolation brought them together. Their partnership was pragmatic, driven by mutual interests rather than deep ideological alignment. But everything changed with the 1979 Iranian Revolution. The overthrow of the Shah and the rise of Ayatollah Khomeini marked a dramatic turning point. Iran transformed overnight from a monarchy with Western ties into an Islamic republic with a radically different worldview. The new regime saw Israel not as a partner, but as an enemy, and began to champion the Palestinian cause as central to its foreign policy. Israel, once a discreet ally, was suddenly labeled the Little Satan, a symbol of Western influence and oppression. Anti-Israel rhetoric became a staple of Iranian politics, and the government used opposition to Israel to rally support at home and across the Muslim world. This shift was not just symbolic, it fundamentally altered the balance of power in the region. Over the decades, Iran's ambitions grew. Its pursuit of nuclear technology and its support for militant groups like Hezbollah and Hamas turned the rivalry into a direct and ongoing threat for Israel. The conflict expanded beyond words, taking on new dimensions through proxy wars, missile programs, and covert operations. Israel, in turn, responded with a mix of covert operations, targeted assassinations, cyber attacks, and relentless diplomatic efforts to isolate Iran on the world stage. The struggle became a high-stakes chess game, with each side seeking to outmaneuver the other in the shadows. Today, the Iran-Israel conflict is fought on multiple fronts through proxy militias, cyber warfare, and intelligence operations. It is a shadow war, often invisible but always simmering, with the potential to explode into open conflict at any moment. The deep mistrust and hostility between these two nations means that even a single miscalculation or unexpected event could trigger a devastating regional war, drawing in neighbors and reshaping the Middle East for generations to come. Neither Iran nor Israel stands alone in the complex landscape of the Middle East. Both nations are deeply embedded in webs of alliances that shape their strategies and influence the region's balance of power. Both countries rely on powerful allies, whose support extends far beyond simple diplomatic gestures, affecting military capabilities, economic stability, and even the ability to project influence across borders. Israel's most crucial partner is the United States. The U.S. provides Israel with billions of dollars in military aid each year, advanced defense technology like the Iron Dome, and unwavering diplomatic protection at international forums such as the United Nations. This partnership is rooted in shared democratic values, strategic interests, and a long history of cooperation. Key Western nations, including the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, also stand behind Israel. These countries offer political backing, intelligence sharing, and support efforts to curb Iran's nuclear ambitions, often aligning with U.S. policy in the region. Iran, meanwhile, leads what it calls the Axis of Resistance. This network includes powerful proxies such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Syrian government, and well-armed militias in Iraq and Yemen. Through these groups, Iran extends its reach, countering Israeli and Western influence and shaping conflicts from Syria to the Red Sea. Russia and China, while not formal military allies, often back Iran on the world stage. They provide crucial economic lifelines by purchasing Iranian oil and investing in infrastructure, and they use their diplomatic weight to shield Iran from international pressure, especially at the United Nations, challenging U.S. dominance in the region. In recent years, Israel has also forged new relationships with Arab states like the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain through the Abraham Accords. These agreements reflect a shared concern over Iran's growing influence and have opened the door to unprecedented cooperation in security, trade, and technology. This intricate web of alliances means that any confrontation between Iran and Israel has the potential to escalate rapidly, drawing in regional and global powers and turning a local conflict into a crisis with worldwide implications. The Middle East is truly a geopolitical chessboard, where every move is watched closely, and a single miscalculation could trigger a chain reaction involving some of the world's most powerful nations. Recent events have brought Iran and Israel closer to open war than ever before. The 2023 Gaza conflict triggered direct Iranian missile and drone attacks on Israel, breaking the taboo against open confrontation. Diplomatically, the International Atomic Energy Agency declared Iran in breach of nuclear obligations, prompting Tehran to accelerate uranium enrichment. Israel now sees a military strike as imminent, with officials warning that time is running out to stop Iran's nuclear program. The U.S. has withdrawn diplomats and put embassies on alert, bracing for possible escalation. American citizens have been advised to leave the region, reflecting fears of a wider war. The world is watching a high-stakes countdown, hoping diplomacy can avert disaster. The United States now finds itself in a precarious position, balancing its long-standing alliance with Israel against the urgent need to prevent a wider regional conflict. As tensions escalate, American officials are under immense pressure to support their Israeli counterparts, while also working tirelessly to avoid actions that could ignite a full-scale war in the Middle East. Every decision is scrutinized, and the stakes have rarely been higher. In a last-ditch effort to de-escalate, a final round of nuclear talks is scheduled in Oman. Here, the U.S. is putting forward a proposal for phased sanctions relief, hoping to persuade Iran to accept strict limits on its uranium enrichment program. Diplomats from both sides know that the outcome of these talks could determine the fate of the region for years to come, and the atmosphere is tense, with every word and gesture carrying enormous weight. President Trump, visibly frustrated by Iran's refusal to accept key American proposals, has begun to issue stern warnings. He makes it clear that if diplomacy fails, the risk of open conflict grows by the day. The administration's patience is wearing thin, and the world is watching closely as the rhetoric intensifies. Behind closed doors, the U.S. has informed Israel that while it will not participate in any offensive military operations against Iran, it stands ready to provide critical intelligence and defensive support should Iran retaliate. This message is meant to reassure Israel of unwavering American backing, but also to discourage any unilateral moves that could spiral out of control. This carefully calibrated stance is designed to deter Israel from acting alone, while simultaneously making it clear that the U.S. will not abandon its ally if war breaks out. The hope is to maintain a delicate balance, projecting strength but also restraint, in a region where miscalculation could have devastating consequences. For now, economic sanctions remain America's primary tool for pressuring Iran. Yet, as the situation grows more volatile, the limitations of sanctions become increasingly apparent. With military options looming in the background, policymakers are acutely aware that time may be running out for a peaceful solution. The administration is determined to avoid being drawn into another costly and unpredictable Middle East war. But with each passing day, the window for diplomacy narrows, and the risk of events spiraling beyond anyone's control becomes more real. As the world watches and waits, the outcome of these high-stakes talks will shape the future of the region. The question remains, can diplomacy pull the Middle East back from the brink, or is conflict now inevitable? War between Iran and Israel would immediately threaten the global economy, especially through the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway carries a fifth of the world's oil. Any disruption would send shockwaves through global markets. Iran has threatened to close the strait, risking a halt to oil shipments and skyrocketing shipping costs. Even the threat of conflict has already made oil prices volatile. A full-scale war could double or triple prices, triggering a global energy crisis and recession. The Persian Gulf is also a hub for other goods. Conflict would disrupt supply chains and raise prices worldwide. Economic stability everywhere would be at risk. The world's interconnected economy means a shock here would be felt everywhere. The economic war is already underway, with U.S. sanctions crippling Iran's economy and targeting its oil exports. A military conflict would escalate sanctions, forcing countries to choose between trading with the U.S. or Iran. Most would cut ties with Iran, further isolating its economy and limiting its ability to fund proxies. China, Iran's key partner, could retaliate if U.S. sanctions hit Chinese companies, risking a wider trade war. Such a clash would disrupt global supply chains and force nations to pick sides, fracturing the world trading system. The regional conflict could quickly become a global economic struggle. Trade and finance would become weapons, compounding the damage of war. Recovery from such a shock would be slow and painful for the entire world. War jitters are already rattling global markets, with investors fleeing risky assets for safe havens like gold and U.S. Treasury bonds. A confirmed strike would trigger a global stock sell-off and a surge in oil and gas prices. Higher energy costs would fuel inflation, forcing central banks to raise interest rates and slowing economic growth. The result could be stagflation, a toxic mix of high inflation and stagnation. Business and consumer confidence would collapse, and global supply chains would be further disrupted. The world could face a deep, prolonged recession. Economic prosperity built over decades could unravel in weeks. The link between global security and economic stability has never been clearer. Beyond economics and strategy, the human cost of war would be catastrophic. Missile strikes and air raids would devastate cities and infrastructure, with civilians in Iran, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq suffering most. Millions could be displaced, overwhelming neighboring countries and aid organizations. The resulting refugee crisis would destabilize the region and create new conflicts. War would empower extremists, silence moderates, and fuel cycles of violence and revenge. The psychological trauma would last for generations, making peace even harder to achieve. Ordinary people would pay the highest price, their lives shattered by decisions made far from home. Preventing war is not just strategic, it's a moral imperative. The Middle East stands at a crossroads: war or diplomacy. A military strike could trigger a multi-front conflict, drawing in proxies and possibly the US, with devastating regional and global consequences. The legacy would be bitterness, destruction, and a region locked in perpetual conflict. The alternative is diplomacy, a difficult but possible path, with talks in Oman offering a last chance for compromise. A deal could limit Iran's nuclear program and open the door to economic recovery and regional stability. This would require painful concessions but could build trust and reduce tensions. The choice is stark: disaster or hope. The decisions made now will shape the region and the world for years to come.